Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to show you a nice piece of equipment I'm lucky enough to have hold of that you don't often see, especially in the UK. These are very rare. So today we're going to go over my M1919A6 30 caliber machine gun. So let's make a start on that. Right guys, let me just explain what my A6 actually is here, because this isn't a real A6 or a deactivated gun. What this is a replica receiver and a fake barrel, which have then had all of the real external parts from an A4 and an A6 put onto them to make a really nice display piece. So the core box receiver section here, that's not real, and the barrel underneath the shroud here, that's not real either. But all of the sights, the handle, the shroud, the bipod, the stock, all of the top cover, which functions still all like that, that's all off a real gun. So this is a really nice display piece and brilliant for teaching people how it works, because unlike some of the more modern deactivated guns, this can still have like a mock charging handle and things like that, so you can show people how it would operate. And it even has a sort of functioning trigger where you can lock the handle back and then release and do bits and pieces like that. And you could also put a gas system in this if you wanted to, and that would be absolutely fine, which you couldn't do with a deac. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's just talk about the A6 a little bit. Right guys, so let's just talk for a minute about what the 1919A6 actually is. So essentially it's a 1919A4 that's had a lighter barrel put into it, had a bipod mounted on the front and given a stock. And that was done to give the Americans something that was more like an MG34-42, more of a universal machine gun sort of thing, than the normal 1919A4, which had to have a full crew to operate because it had a tripod and everything, so you'd have to have at least 3 people really to operate efficiently, so you could have someone loading it, someone carrying the tripod and someone carrying the gun. Whereas with the A6 here, all you need is someone carrying the gun and a loader, which is much more efficient and much easier to reposition when you need to. So that was the reason they did it. Just really as a answer to the MG34 and 42 in that idea of concept, but they couldn't just instantly have a purpose-built universal machine gun. So this is a bit of a bridge between having nothing and being able to come up with a full design, which is what the M60 would be. So let me now just walk you over some of the features of this and how that is different from an A4. Right, so we're going to start at the back because that's really probably the easiest bit. They mounted a stock to it, and that's for obvious reasons. If you've got no stock, you've got a lot less control. When you have the stock on there, you lay behind this gun. Keep in mind this is not built to be fired from the shoulder at all, ever. That's just not going to work. This stock you can't really even get on your shoulder when you're standing up. The design of this here is built specifically for you to lay behind it or be on lower ground, say you're in a foxhole, and then that would sit on top of your shoulder and you look straight down the gun. So in no way was this ever built to be shouldered. That's not that sort of stock. So basically all they did was they had this piece of metal, it was like a folded piece of metal, and that slides on the end of the pistol grip, and then you have this wing nut down here. You just tighten that up and that won't come off. That's got a little bar that spins round. It's impossible to get that off when that's done up. So that's the first difference between this and the A4. The next difference between this and an A4 is that it has a carry handle. Now there was at least 2, I believe though 3 versions of the A6, this being the last version of it. The earlier version, the original version that you'll see in World War II, didn't have this nice carry handle. That had what was essentially a metal bar with 2 rings that went around the barrel shroud like that. So you'd have one there, and you'd have the metal bar between them. And that was free floating, so if you let go of it, that'd just flop underneath. Looks really uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to be using it. I've never actually seen one though, so I can't give you a full description of it. But they replaced that with this, which is the handle of a BAR, a Browning automatic rifle, which is just fitted to a bigger bracket than normal, so that'll go over this barrel shroud instead of the little barrel of a BAR, what normally goes on. And that's much better because it doesn't flop around underneath the gun or get in the way. It's much more comfortable to hold, and that was just a general improvement. Then we get to the front of the gun. You've got the bipod mounted on it, which is obviously really the biggest difference, because you could do this without the handle and without the stock. You could still have just the bipod on it and get the same sort of idea, although maybe not as effective. So the bipod on this is basically just a bipod off a BAR. Well, the legs are the same as the BAR anyway, and it's just mounted on a different bracket. I'll bring you down in a little while to show the close close-up of this so I can show you the details, because it has actually got a couple of little features on it that are pretty good. But in general, it's a terrible bipod. It was a terrible bipod on the BAR, and it's even a worse bipod on a gun that's as heavy and big as this is. And lastly, for the changes, probably one of the most distinguishable features of the A6 is the big cone at the end. Now, originally they didn't have them. The first version of the A6 would have just ended where my hand is here. That still was different to an A4, the normal 30 cal, but it wasn't as extreme as this. Then they added this cone, and there's two lengths of the cone as well. And basically why they did that was because they put a lighter barrel in the A6 to counteract some of the extra weight for the bipod and everything being on the front, because you'd be surprised how different that makes the gun feel. And that had some problems cycling in automatic. That became a little unreliable according to the test reports. So this cone counteracts that by allowing the gas to put a bit more force backwards on the system, and that way it was cycled fine, and that fixed that problem. So they're the main differences, like visually, between the A6 and the A4, and what they did to make this into a sort of bridge gap, like stopgap universal machine gun, but not really. And if I can just hold the camera steady for a minute, you can see this is the booster cone. So again, as I said, normally that would end here, and then this is the later version. Now, this version almost certainly didn't see use in the Second World War. It was made in 1945, that was the actual design of this version, but I've never seen a photo of it in actual combat. So technically that's not quite correct, but considering how excessively rare the parts are for A6s, I think that's a compromise I'm willing to make. Whether or not you guys agree with that, I don't know. But even in the series Band of Brothers, which we know everyone loves to hate and moan about on the internet, they have an A6 with this booster cone exactly the same as mine, because that's just how rare the earlier ones are. I've only ever seen one. Right guys, let's get you a closer look at this bipod then, so you can see some of the little features of it. So you can see here the arms are the exact same arms that would be used on a BAR. So this wing nut here, you undo that and that lets you lengthen and shorten the leg. This is in the shortest position. And then this top wing nut here, you undo that and you can pull the whole arm down, and then it spins back and you put it back in sideways, and that's if you want it in the up folded position. It's not a quick process to do it. The bottom wing nut for the leg, I find if that's not done up insanely tight, the leg will just flop about. So the idea of having it halfway or anything like that is just out the window. That's just going to collapse and flap about. And the wing nut at the top, it can't really hold it in the upright position. It flaps around quite a lot as well. So it's a really not ideal position or system, because you have to have it done up so tight that you almost can't get it undone again. That might be an age thing, but I should imagine these were never very good. So let's just show you one of the better features the bipod it does have though, and that's these little support legs under here. So these are basically a secondary bipod. So if you have the main legs up, these two little legs can be used to pop the gun down. Like I could have it sitting on the table on these legs, that wouldn't fall over us, fairly stable. Or if you were just moving about and you got down quickly, that in theory would stop the barrel going in the dirt and getting all this covered in muck and messing it up. So that's a nice little feature, even though the bipod on its own is pretty bad. And just before you go on the bipod, if I lift the barrel up here, you can see that that's got a complete swing. Try not to throw the gun on the floor would be a good one, it guys. So yeah, that's the bipod. Right guys, so here's the carry handle, and as you can see that's just the same as the BAR's carry handle. So it just has partial movement, that won't flap around under the gun and get in the way, and that's just held on by this one bracket here, done up by this one bolt, nice and tight. And that's a really comfortable handle actually, even with a gun this long and heavy, that's quite comfortable to hold like that. You just have to be aware that the gun will swing side to side like that. And again, same as the booster cone on the end, this isn't the original version, what the A6 had. So again, I've never seen a picture of an A6 which has this carry handle in use in World War II. So normally they'd have the other old style which had a thin metal bracket and a thin metal bracket which then go up to a metal bar, probably from back there to there, and you'd hold it, and that would also flop around freely when you weren't using it. Really not a very good design, and they replaced it quickly with this, which they were already using as well on the BAR. So that just made sense, and it is a much better design. And here you can see the stock up close, guys, so you can see the detail on that. So you can see that's just basically a piece of metal that's folded round with a plate fitted on the end of it. And then you have this bracket here, which has got a wing nut on a bolt, and when you undo that, that will just let you slide the entire stock off of the pistol grip. So that's a really simple design, but that's a very strange looking thing compared to like a rifle stock. But like I said earlier, that's specifically for use when you're laying behind it, or you have this just sat on top of your shoulder, like if you're in a foxhole or something like that. So it's a nice little piece, and it can be easily removed if you don't want it on there as well, because you can easily use the gun without that stock. And now I'll just show you some of the details of the receiver, because that is a really nice piece, even though it's not actually a real gun. So as I was saying earlier, the bottom here, the receiver part, is not real, but then all of these bits, the handle and everything, that's all off a real gun. So what you've got in this one, you've got a mock charging handle, so I can show you where that would move as such. The grip, the trigger, can actually be held down, and you can pull the bolt back like that to lock it back, show people how to do, and that will actually release the bolt as well. You just get a little spring rattle. And you've also got the sort of bolt safety hold open there that actually works. So that's a nice little feature. And if you let go of that, the trigger locks it in, and then you can release the trigger. So you can show people some of the mechanism, how bits of it would have worked. Also your sights up here, if I spin the gun round without chucking it on the floor, you can see you've got real sights there, where it rests like that. You just open them up like a proper one, and then your top cover will come forwards. You've got no bits in it at all, with the exception of the little spring that you can see down there. If I grab the charging handle, and you can just see how that works. So that's really, really simple, really nice little design. And you can put a belt of ammo in here, and that will hold itself tight under just tension for display, so that's just really perfect. And if you wanted to, you could put a gas system inside it too, which would be cool, but I'll probably never do that, because that's a bit of a waste of time for what I want. Right guys, so that's a quick overview of my A6, a little bit of information about what they were. So as I stated before, my A6 is the last version. These versions almost certainly didn't see use in World War II. They were invented in 45, this particular version of it. They did come out in 45, but I've never seen any photos of one that reached frontline combat. However, because of how excessively rare the earlier carry handle and the earlier barrel end are, this is as close as I think you're ever going to be able to get to having a portrayal of that for displays. And like I said, even in Band of Brothers, the A6 that they have is exactly the same as mine, because that's just how rare the earlier versions are. So I'm afraid that's a little bit of a divergence from the specifics that I have to do on displays, but I do tend to always explain that to people when they're asking about this particular gun. So hopefully you'll forgive me for being a little bit inaccurate there. What can you do? But before we go anyway, I thought I would just show you how big this really is, give you a bit of sense of scale. You guys know I'm pretty big now, both round the waist and in height. So I thought I'd just pick this up and show you how big and cumbersome it really is. Right guys, so here we go. If I pick that up, you can see that is really quite a size. And I'll probably start huffing and puffing in a minute, because this weighs a lot. Even with no guts inside it, this weighs a lot. So most of the time you'd probably have it up. You'd have it up on your shoulder, where it obviously just digs straight into your shoulder. And you can just see that's a massive piece of equipment. That is longer than an MG42, it is heavier than an MG42. You spin it around, you're liable to knock someone out with the stock when you got it on your shoulder. I might have smacked a few friends in the face by doing that in the past. Who knows, these things happen. But, you know, it's really uncumbersome. And you can see that's just a struggle to even move it about. You've obviously got plenty of ways to hold it like that. You can get it underneath. That's what I tend to find is the most comfortable way to carry it, is like that. The carry handle's very good, and you can easily hold it like it. But that makes your arm ache in no time, I'm telling you. That's just not nice. You can do yourself some good old weightlifting with this thing. That is just a monster. So, and the idea that anyone's ever going to fire that from the hip, well, just blow that completely out of your mind. I know there was a little bit of that done with normal A4s, but A4s are substantially lighter than A6s. And yeah, just forget it. You're going to do yourself a serious injury and you're not going to hit anything either. So I'm going to put this down before I start huffing and puffing too much. So there you go. Right, just before I go, we've hit the 250 subscriber milestone. Only a little thing, I know, for most channels, but that's pretty big for this one. So give me ideas what you'd like as a celebration video. I was thinking about maybe doing another impression. I could get this out, modify my carbine weapon to be a very late war, and give you a late war machine gun impression video if you'd like, or something like that. If you've got any other ideas, let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.